I've come to learn that I'm not alone. I think that there are a lot of people who, in some capacity, feel as if there's a little voice telling them, oh, maybe you shouldn't do that, or maybe you don't have enough experience, or maybe, you're not the person to do this. Maybe you don't have a good enough idea, or whatever it may be. And I'm here to tell everyone that you're perfect exactly as you are, and you're where you're supposed to be.
Disinformation is spreading.
There will be a surprise outbreak is the issue of pandemic.
No social distancing at all.
They said that they would express their concerns about the mask supply.
Where's the mask? Where's the glove?
A second wave is...
We all need some good news.
A message for all the healthcare workers out there.
Thank you.
If you're looking for hope tonight, raise your hand. If you feel alone and don't understand, if you're fighting the fight of your life, then stand.
From Santa Rosa, California, this is 19 Stories. I'm Cheryl Halling. Heather Hansen O'Neill is a business and motivational coach, TEDx presenter, author of the books Find Your Fire at 40 and Teams on Fire. For over 19 years, Heather's company has helped clients from entrepreneurs of new businesses to Fortune 100 companies improve their relationships and lead more effectively in a rapidly changing corporate environment. She's spoken about this as a guest expert on NBC, ABC, The CW, and Fox. She's also the host of Choices Live that airs Mondays on LinkedIn and is the creator and host of the weekly podcast From Fear to Fire, Secrets to Overcome Fear, Embrace Your Gifts, and Achieve Success, that is dedicated to helping busy professionals overcome everyday challenges and move forward to a more peaceful, joyful, and energized life. Heather also has a very adventurous spirit and likes to jump out of perfectly good airplanes in a sport known as skydiving. I have another name for it, but we'll talk with Heather about that and so much more. Let me first begin by welcoming Heather Hansen O'Neill to 19 Stories.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. You are so funny. This is awesome.
Hello to you, Heather, and thank you so much for joining me. And I understand that yesterday was your birthday. So I'd like to wish you a somewhat belated happy birthday, as I believe that we should celebrate our entire birthday month. Hopefully we can party a bit during our time together.
That would be fantastic. And thank you so much. I do love a good celebration.
Good. So where are you joining me from in the country?
I'm currently in South Carolina. Lovely South Carolina.
And I have so enjoyed the beautiful coastal pictures that you share on LinkedIn. And as a fellow shutterbug, I really appreciate the breath of fresh air that your images provide in the midst of a workday.
It definitely starts my day in just the most perfect fashion to be able to watch the sunrise over the ocean. It's nothing quite like it.
Speaking of your work and being in the midst of a workday, and given that your theme and the name of your podcast are really close to my heart, especially part of your name, begin chatting about your podcast From Fear to Fire and how that came about for you.
Sure. I really love to help move people, right? So whether it is from where they are to where they want to be, I work a lot with people through fear, breaking through fear, because fear tends to keep people stagnant, keep them from taking the right actions. And so I've run into so many incredible people who have experienced challenge and fear, and they found their way through, and they learned the lessons, and they became better for it. And when they share their stories with our listeners, it's just filled with hope and strategy and inspiration. And I just have so much fun doing it.
I can certainly appreciate that and understand that, because having birthed my podcast out of a very fearful time, and realizing that no matter where people were, whether they launched their businesses or their dreams and desires already, or they wanted to, it's really interesting how fear manifests and shows up in different ways. So can you chat about your wonderful TEDx talk, which I listened to, entitled Becoming Conscious, How Doing What You Must Can Change the World? And curious, what does doing what you must mean for you?
It's a great question, and I really appreciate you asking it. I've been very passionate about this specific talk. I did a previous TED Talk numerous years ago, and I loved that too. But this one I've spent years researching, and I really feel like when you are following your path, when you are consciously looking at your belief system and choosing ones that serve you and others better, that it moves beyond, can I do this? Into you must, when there's purpose behind it, and when you're driven. Cheryl, you bring this out of people. You do a beautiful job in helping people find that as well, and the hope. And, I think that you must be, I feel as if you must be driven to do it. And there's so many people that have that inside of them and don't realize that it's possible, and that they can move beyond just, oh, I don't know, I'm nervous, I'm scared, I think I can do this, into not only can I, but I must, I have to do this because it's the right thing.
It's interesting that you say that, because as a coach, I mean, you're, and I want to talk a bit about that as well. I mean, part of a good coach is to bring out those aspects of a person's personality and dreams, hopes, and desires in a way that expands them. And actually, it's interesting that I just had a similar conversation with a group of people prior to us meeting here today about how important the right coach is. Mm-hmm. So when you are going to work with someone, how do you know whether or not they're ready, they're right, yes. You're right? How does that process unfold for you?
Oh my goodness. Nobody asked me this, and I love the question because it has been it's been a transition for me personally. I've had my business for quite a few years now. And of course, as with everyone, when you are starting a business, maybe you're choosing clients because they're there. Because they're willing to pay you. I mean, let's just be honest. But then you start to get more discerning, and you start to realize, what, I really want to help people. And if this isn't a good fit, then we shouldn't be working together. And that's okay. Letting yourself off the hook of, feeling this, I've got to do this for everybody. Not everybody is right. You're so spot on when you mention that. And in particular, when it comes to something as intimate as coaching, because it's a very deep relationship, and you have to be the right fit. And there are amazing coaches out there, and there are plenty of people that are the right fit. We don't have to be trying to make something fit that just doesn't feel good. We want to be working with people where we can bring the best out of them, and where it's joyful, where it's not arduous for either party. So I believe that, and I've learned that lesson. And there are ways that you can very nicely communicate that you're not a good fit. You don't have to be mean about it, because both people want to make sure that it's right.
Sure. And in your communication, and what I gather is a big part of your coaching, you're addressing generational conditioning. And that's one of the things in your TEDx talk that really resonated with me, because we don't realize how much we carry on things from just that, generations, whether it's within our family or with an environment, or maybe neighborhoods we grew up in, and old tapes that play for us. So I love the fact that you talked about, you take work because initially you need it, but then you become more discerning. And then hopefully in turn, you help the people that you're working with also become more discerning, that you don't have to be the right fit for everyone, because we're not. You can't be the right fit for everyone, right?
Right, 100%. And, becoming conscious, that the TED Talk is about that. All of my work with people has to do with becoming more aware of who you are, what you believe in, what you actually believe in, not what was given to you, what may have been passed down, or you may have learned it from coaches, teachers, media, any number of places. And in particular, certain things have been passed down from generation to generation to generation without any thought. And so when we can become aware, when we become conscious of where these beliefs come from, then we can look at them and we can choose. I'm such a proponent of choice. If you look at your belief system and you say, is this true? Is it mine? Is it serving me? If you ask those questions, it's not difficult to realize this isn't right for me. This isn't good for the people that I interact with. This isn't fair. This isn't kind. And once you start to ask the questions, you show up in your life in such a powerful way.
Yeah, and that ties in, I imagine, with your Choices Live that you do on LinkedIn, because I've watched a couple of them now where you've invited guests from business, as well as the most recent one you did was on the hospitality professors, or the professors of hospitality. And we hear so much about consequences of choices, but do we ever think about what it means in a positive way for us, not just a negative way? And so it's really turning it to say, hey, you do have a choice in this matter, in a very positive way, to affirm who you are and what you want to do. So maybe you can speak a little bit more to what your Choices Live is, and how does that balance out with From Fear to Fire, and which is your podcast, and now you have your Choices Live, which is on LinkedIn.
Well, it's really interesting because, and I just want to mention to your listeners how excited I am that you are going to be coming on to Choices Live, because I think you're going to be phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
No pressure.
No pressure at all, Cheryl. But Choices came about, oddly, from my fans, from my listeners, from the people that I work with, meaning that I didn't choose it. When I was offered the opportunity to do a LinkedIn Live, I had a couple of different ideas about the topic that I wanted to talk about, but I've become really focused on serving my clients at a higher level. So I asked them, I put it out there and I said, you know what, I could talk about this, and this. What do you want me to talk about? What do you think is most important in your life right now? And it was such a huge percentage of people who said that they wanted to talk about choices and feeling like either they don't have choices, or that they don't like their choices, or they get really confused because they have too many choices. Like, there were all these things that came up from clients and friends that I was just so excited to see, because when they get to choose, then you know you're really serving, right? Because you're fulfilling that need. And I'm not the one. I bring on, occasionally I'll do a show on my own, but I bring on amazing guests like you, and we talk about what choice looks like in many different capacities. You know, the difficult choices that we've had to make, the choices that we wish we never had to make, the choices that are available to us, in that open our minds to possibility, and how you can strategize choice. Because I think that people often give up their power of choice because they allow other people and other things and external situations to impact them in such a way that it changes how they feel, it changes how they show up, it changes, so much about them, and they give up their power. But the biggest thing that people have to understand is that they have the choice. No matter what's going on around them, they have the choice of how to respond to it, how to feel about it, what to do with it. And I think that is incredibly freeing.
How we react to things is equally as important as how we are proactive with things, because our reactions, and I will raise my hand over here, sometimes I even, in the midst of reacting to something, it's kind of like that thought bubble that you wish you could chase and just stuff it back in your head. Like,
Right? Definitely.
So you obviously are very passionate about igniting folks to be their best, i.e. the fire theme.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a bit about your books, Finding Your Fire at 40. And I completely understand now that I'm a couple of decades past that age, and Teams on Fire.
Okay. Well, thank you for asking. And it's really interesting if anyone is listening to get who might be in this choice of how to maybe market themselves, right? So my first book the working title was Find Your Fire. And I had literally a 2-hour conversation with the marketing department of my publishing company because I was so adamant that anyone can find their fire. And they're like, Heather, you don't understand. It doesn't matter. You have to narrow the market, because if you're too broad and you say anyone can find their fire, then you're really not going to appeal to anyone. So they kept asking me these questions. Well, where are the majority of your clients? Well, what are the biggest challenges that your clients have? They just were, they were so difficult. But I'm really grateful that they were, because it made so much sense in the end. I was fighting them. And then all of a sudden I said, okay, well, all right, I do have a lot of clients in their 40s. And somebody said, there we go.
Bada bing. There you go. Ding, 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 ding.
I said, but wait, I don't want to leave anybody out. And they said, you don't understand. When you narrow the market to finding your fire in your 40s, you're not really narrowing anyone out, because other people will be drawn to it if it's meant for them to read. But you have now really spoken to that person in their 40s that is going through their own transformation. And so that was the first one. And then, I do a lot of corporate work. And so I was speaking about how to help ignite the fire and the productivity and the focus in teams. And they just were kind of calling out for it to be, having additional product and additional information and ways for them to consume the information. So that's when I wrote Teams on Fire. And I don't even know if you are aware, Cheryl, that my newest book is about to be released, and it doesn't have a fire theme. Isn't that crazy?
I didn't know that. And actually, being in fire country right now, I'm in Sonoma County, California. That's their share of. No, I just think it was quite, when I was reading all of this, I was like, it's a good thing I like her and we can talk about fire, because I've had enough of it.
I'm so sorry. It's the good kind.
It's a different kind of, yes, it's a different kind of fire. So tell us about your new book.
Well, this is my first book that I am co-authoring. My other books were mine. And I will tell you that it has been such a beautiful collaboration. And I ran into this gentleman, Will Lewis, years and years ago. He came to see me speak at an event, and we ended up chatting the next day. We had lunch, we learned about each other, and he joined one of my programs. And this is all very important, because at the time that he saw me speak and he joined this coaching program, he was 83, I believe.
Wow.
And this is so important, because I have learned so much from his sense of curiosity about the world. He's constantly looking to stimulate his mind and to learn new things. And he's now currently 92, and this is his first book. And even though he's done so much in his life, he's not written a book to date. And so I'm very, very excited to be able to have worked with him and created this together. And it really has made what the result of the book so much bigger and better than either one of us had in mind in the beginning. It was a true collaboration. So the name of the book is Where's the Office? Moving Today's Leaders from What Is to What Can Be. Once again, I'm always in that process of moving people forward, but it really has to do with helping leaders right now in our current environment in how do we lead, whether it be in an office, whether it be remote, or whether it be hybrid. But it's really about understanding that the office is within you. And when you come from that element of self-leadership and the tools that you can bring to the table as a leader in any of these environments, there are things that you can do. There are strategies. We've got different tools in there. And it has been so much fun to also go out and validate this with focus groups and business people today. It's just been a blast to do.
And what a beautiful, beautiful testimony. And anybody out there listening who thinks their time has passed, to hear about a man that's 92 years old, co-authoring a book and really having a whole other expression. He's never written a book, first-time author. So let that be an inspiration. That's amazing, Heather.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been absolutely joyful. And it's also, I have to tell you, we lived fairly close to each other when we started the book. And we would have our weekly in-person, I'd bring coffee and muffins and we'd get together and we would brainstorm and we would write. And then I moved. So now not only, this is what I mean by him constantly being curious and willing to learn new things. This 92-year-old gentleman is not only writing a book, but he had to learn all of these new technologies. He had to transition our weekly meetings into Zoom meetings. Wow. He's just been incredible.
How timely about the office being within yourself, because there's so many companies prior to the pandemic who believe that everybody had to be at the office, that no one's going to be productive at home unless you're an entrepreneur. That's another story. But as far as traditional office environments, like you're going to get more out of people being in the office. And as someone who has freelanced with a lot of different businesses, I can tell you that is not the case. I have been in a lot of places where you're like, well, if I was your boss, you would not be working here because for the past 3 hours, you've been in the kitchen talking to someone. So anyway.
That is so true. It's so true. But when we become, all right, I'm going to go back again for a moment, but when we become aware, when we consciously look at what is the best environment here, where can people work most effectively? Where are they going to be most productive? Are we really making the best use of our time to have people commuting an hour and a half here? Or can we have them work from home maybe 4 days a week and then bring everybody together for a real collaborative effort on that 5th day? Or maybe, there's so many different options. And when we just break down the walls of what we think we should do and look at what is best for our people right now and ask that question, you're going to get so many better answers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've met people who have like a 2.5-hour commute each way. Mm-hmm. And I think before you even, let's talk about what time they have to get up and get ready and then commute. And by the time they get to the office, they're like totally stressed out. I mean, so the blessing I think that's come out of this time, which sounds like your book speaks to, is that we've recreated ourselves. And not everybody's had that luxury. I'm very well aware that I always feel like I have to do that disclaimer because so many people have been affected in adverse ways. But the positive that has come out of that is finding new ways to do business and finding new ways to really live into the best that we are because we're not stressed, because we don't have to commute, because of all the things that you mentioned. So flipping to the other side of 92, and what a beautiful, beautiful story. I was reading about what you refer to as pass the torch and the belief that it is our responsibility for individuals and businesses to give via their time, money, gifts, and resources. And with that in mind, you created a program called LFocus. So please tell us what LFocus is and your motivation for forming it.
Well, you've done your homework, Cheryl. I love this. I'm so glad you brought this up because this is a passion project of mine. I do believe exactly what you said. I believe that if we have the capacity to serve, we should do it. And for me, I love working with students. I love helping people who maybe do not have the resources or the opportunity to be exposed to the same leadership strategies that others have. So when I was, how many years ago now did I do it? Probably 11, 12 years ago, I created LFocus, which stands for Leadership for Our Children's Ultimate Success. And
Beautiful.
so whenever I do a keynote presentation, or if I'm doing a corporate program of any capacity, a portion of what I do goes back to making sure that I do another program for an underserved community, particularly for students who have not been able to be exposed to these things. So what I love to do, and this depends on the company, sometimes the company will have a group that they love, a local school or a local community project, a Boys and Girls Club or whatever it is. And they say, you know what, when you come to speak for us, we'd love for you to also speak to this other group. So I do that. Or if they aren't currently working with a group of people that they really they love, then we sometimes bring them together. And this is so much fun, where I love opening the conversation between the generations and the light bulbs that go on for them. There's a lot of preconceived notions, both ways, in all directions, right? Where people are like, well, the millennials this, or the baby boomers this, or the, Gen X, whatever it might be. There's a lot of other, they do that because of this, right? But when you break down those walls and you ask the same group, like put all of these people together in a room and you ask them the same question, and they have to work together to solve that question, to solve that problem, amazing things happen, because then they start to appreciate the way that the others in their table, if it is, maybe it's a little breakout, right, where they have different generations, different cultures, different whatever it is, and they start to see the way that their brain works and see the amazing ideas and consciousness that some of our younger folks have this stigma that, oh, they're so selfish. So not. They are so socially conscious. And so there's so many things that come out of these conversations that I get really passionate about. So that's what LFocus is. It's about offering up our time here in my company to groups of people, particularly students, who don't have the opportunity. But whenever possible, if I can make that happen, where I bring the generations together, it just lights it up at a whole other level.
It does. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about it, because it's such first of all, a very generous place to come from, to, first of all, have that consciousness that not everybody has the same opportunities, and you want to expose them to these opportunities. And the name itself, Leadership for Our Children's Ultimate Success, we hear so many times in the media that what is the legacy we're leaving to our children? And, well, what is it that we're doing proactively that we can leave a different legacy? And how beautiful that you have that desire to bring multi-generations together, because I think maybe the not so positive side of technology is that it's separated that influence, that the elders, that's the reason we call them elders, had an influence on children because they were in their midst. There was that, that whole big community and family, and technology has kind of separated that. And yet you have found a way to bridge that. And that's so beautiful. So thank you for speaking about that.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking it, because I love talking about it.
So I mentioned that you like to jump out of perfectly good planes.
That's why I was laughing in the beginning, Cheryl, because you called it a perfectly good plane.
And I know that you also are the creator of something called Adventure to Connection. So is that what you meant by adventure?
Well, yes, I like to encourage people to step out of their comfort zone. I know that's a little crazy. I do recognize that not everyone has the same comfort zone that I have. So some of our adventures are bigger than others, but they're not all crazy. So, but it's helping people to connect at a different level. And when you can move, we've done things like kayaking, we've done yoga. You know what I love to do? I love to do breaking through fear workshops on the trapeze as the graduation ceremony. And so there are all these different ways that you can expand your comfort zone. But literally, for anyone listening, it's your comfort zone. So as long as you're expanding your comfort zone, you're moving on the other side of it. So that could be going to, picking up the phone and calling someone that makes you a little nervous, that you're thinking, oh, they won't want to talk to me, or, doing that, or humming as you're in line at Starbucks, or, it can be simple. Just doing something that makes you uncomfortable each day prepares you. It's like building a muscle. It prepares you for when the big, audacious, scary opportunities come up. You've now had some practice getting uncomfortable, because all of the most amazing things that happen in our lives are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They just are. So when we can prepare for that, it opens you. It gets you ready. And I'm a big fan of that.
I love that. It's interesting because your name, and when you explain it exactly what that is creating these adventures. I worked for a company called Adventure 16, which was a wilderness outfitting company. And I started working for them after I took an Outward Bound course to go rock climbing and backpacking. And I took the rock climbing course because I was afraid of heights. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, how interesting, because to take it a step further and say, to challenge yourself. So when you do face those big, hairy, audacious things that challenge you, you've already taken baby steps towards that. That's really beautiful. And it's clear, Heather, that your life's work is about helping people overcome their fears. And we touched on generational conditioning and finding one's life purpose. And so I'm curious what fears you may have faced in finding your own life purpose.
Oh, wow. So many. I think that we teach what we need to learn. And so I spent many years in the research that I have, in doing the things that I have, because I needed it. And then, you get kind of good at it, and other people notice that, and then they ask you to help them. But it starts out because you have an interest in something, because you needed to hear that. And so I think there's so many that I could choose from, but one that is true vulnerability here is this feeling of I never really felt when I was growing up as if I was enough. I always had to feel like I had to do stuff or say stuff that would get me noticed, get the attention, right? And because I felt like I had to be the one to do that first, because if I was quiet, they might ask me something that I'm uncomfortable with, or maybe I don't know the answer, or maybe this or that. There were all these things that I was afraid of, and I've come to learn that I'm not alone. I think that there are a lot of people who in some capacity feel as if there's a little voice telling them, oh, maybe you shouldn't do that, or maybe you don't have enough experience, or maybe, you're not the person to do this. Maybe you don't have a good enough idea, or whatever it may be. And I'm here to tell everyone that you're perfect exactly as you are, and you're where you're supposed to be. And we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to know everything. We don't have to be able to answer all the questions all the time. It's okay not to know, but you're where you're supposed to be. And when you can release, I had to spend a lot of years thinking about that feeling of, do I want to stay attached to this feeling of inadequacy? Or does it hold me back from really serving others, from being better in every role that I have, if I just let go of my attachment to it, right? If I, stop letting it rule my life. And I start to just appreciate what I do know or what I can do, and then just move forward from there. there's a lot of freedom in that, and it opens you to be able to really embrace the unique gifts that each and every one of us have.
Thank you for taking a moment to explain that and be vulnerable. And you said something that was really key, and that is being of service, because I think it sounds like when you took the focus off you being enough and put it on being of service to others, then you are enough. And I know that for some people listening, this may sound very new agey and airy fairy, but there's so much conversation right now, and that's blamed on social media, but obviously it's existed for a long time. That now we just have all these beautiful curated images that we compare our lives to of, oh, I can never live up to that person's Instagram life. I am never going to be that. I'm not enough. And I also see it in some of the podcasting groups I'm in, and hand raised over here where I sat on an idea, really, I say 3 years, but it was like 5 years. And it took a pandemic for me to finally launch my podcast. But we do that. We do that of saying we have to be perfect out of the gate instead of, no, we just got to show up. Right?
Exactly. Yes. Show up with the best of intentions and everything's going to be just fine. I'm so glad, and I'm sure all of your listeners are so glad that you took the leap, Cheryl, and started this podcast, because I've listened to many of the shows and they're really, really good. Powerful stuff.
Thank you. I'm really honored that you would say that and also be my guest. And keeping in the line of what we're talking about, then if you had to pick one of your greatest achievements, which you have many that we haven't even really spoken about, professionally or otherwise, what would it be?
Trying not to get emotional here. So I would definitely have to say parenting. I have 3 amazing sons, and it's the absolute hands down hardest job that there is, and you can go out there and you can serve thousands, millions, however many, but when you can touch one human in that deep of a way, that's really, really meaningful. And I will tell you that they are the ones that teach me about resilience and about love and about, over and over again, every day there's a lesson that they teach me. And I'm just so incredibly grateful for them.
That is so beautiful. And I have actually heard that from a couple of my guests, not just women, which I would think, wow, it would be such a motherly thing to say. But no, I actually had a man on my show who said the same thing, being a parent, being a husband. Yeah, kids, I've been around my niece, I've been around other kids, really do. It's amazing. You're like, how did all that get in your head at 2?
There's no manual. There's nothing.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, there's no manual to our life. How do we
That's true.
have one for our children, right? So conversely, do you have a less than successful time that informed you of the next right step?
Oh my goodness, yes. I make mistakes every single day.
Hey, you're human. Yes, yay.
Every single day. But I think patience. Because inside of me, and this from the questions about adventure, the questions about, me wanting to serve or starting new projects or books or whatever it might be, you can probably guess that I'm a bit of a driver. I like to take action. I like to make things happen. And I believe in that. I believe in that very much. However, with that comes a lot of impatience. Like I want to do it. I want to get it done. I want it to be done yesterday. And that's not realistic. And so one of the best lessons that I have learned, and I've had to learn numerous times because apparently I need it over and over again, is about patience. When I stop and I pause and I allow for whatever is going on that's like blocking me from doing what I want to do. It's actually there for a reason. And the slowing down, the pausing enables me to sometimes see things that I didn't see and I wouldn't have seen if I would have kept driving. And it enables me to make everything that I do just a little bit better by listening, by paying attention. And so I've come to appreciate patience when it wasn't always that kind of a relationship.
As a fellow impatient person, I can appreciate that, really. And there's, I have a saying that I will say to myself: rejection is God's protection, or everything in its perfect time. Because had you gotten it earlier, would you have been able, or would I have been able to handle it? Would I have received it in the most full, expansive way that it was presented later on when I was mature enough to handle either the information or the blessing? So I think patience, to give yourself some grace, is a lifelong process. We're humans. And in an era where everything is now, now we can go online and get anything, any time of the day from anywhere in the world, but apply that to our personal lives and interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
It's like, why can't I make you disappear, or why can't I make you appear? So
it's so true. Like because we have this instant gratification, it actually makes the moments when we become present, like really, really present. Like I feel your presence with me right now. I'm giving you my presence right now. And when you can put aside the technology and do that with your loved ones, with your clients, it makes it stand out, I think, that much more now, because it's lacking in the world and we need it. We crave it.
Yeah, it's like my husband will say, it used to be we anticipated holidays and you waited for them and there was that magic in that. And now everything is so instant. It's kind of taken away the mystery of it. But you said it so succinctly with instant gratification. So what makes Heather Hansen O'Neill hopeful?
Humanity. When I moved down here 6 months ago to South Carolina, and I started these morning beach walks, it just so happened to coincide with my mother getting ill. And so there was a lot of time where I was very purposeful in trying to seek the humanity, seek answers, right? And so in seeking, the interesting thing is I found them. And when you look around, looking for the good in people, looking for the amazing in the world, the beauty, the love, you will find it.
Yes.
And that makes me so hopeful, because all we have to do is open our eyes. All we have to do is look for it and shift our focus away from the much easier negativity, complaining, whatever is going on, the distractions, the noise. If we just for a moment shift our focus to seek the humanity, it is incredibly hopeful out there and inside of you and me and everyone.
And all you have to do is look at your photos, that you are taking pictures of really the same place you live every day. And yet every day presents something different and magical and mysterious and beautiful. And whether it's the roaring waves and sea to the most pristine, just heavenly sunset, like you say, if you look for it, you're going to find it. And so thank you for sharing that. And would you say that also brings you joy? Is there something else that brings you joy?
It definitely brings me joy. But if you want to add one more, my previous life, I was a dancer. And so whenever I have the opportunity to dance, whether it's to go take a class or whether it's to turn on the music really loud in the kitchen, that also brings me joy. So I'm going to encourage everyone to turn the music up, your favorite song, and just dance around. And it will be very difficult to not be happy.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, one of the acting classes I'm taking, the coach absolutely believes in working with music and getting people up and moving your body and getting, just getting the rhythm of your heart and soul going so that you can take that, whatever creativity comes up and apply that to your acting. So what kind of dancing? I didn't find that in anything that I've read. So,
Really?
mhm.
Oh, yes. I'm classically trained, but most of the performing that I did was in jazz and modern, some musical stuff. But I am thrilled for you that you have a class that includes that because, it does spark that creativity. So the moving of the body, 100%, I can see how that would help in any of the acting that you're doing. I love whoever is teaching that class.
Well, we'll give a shout out to Sunday Muse. It is it's really because she works more in the whole person. It's not just animation. It's really the whole person from your head and your heart and your spirit and your body. And so much of voice acting is physical anyway, because you have to rely on your voice telling the story. And if there was a soundtrack to your life, and I love the fact that you really led us right into this question, talking about your dancing. If there was a soundtrack to your life, what would be on it and why?
Oh my gosh. It would be the most eclectic little playlist because it would include I love so many different kinds of music. There would be like these highlights of these crazy dance tunes. There'd be some classical, there'd be some Zen meditation stuff. There would be like folk kind of thing because that's what life is.
Mhm.
Life
Yeah,
is just precious moments sewn together, and I love all of it. I wouldn't trade any of it.
I love that line. It's life is precious moments sewn together, and it is. How does one sew up communication with you?
Lovely little segue there. If Heather Hansen O'Neill can be put basically anywhere. It's the website. You can email me at heather@heatherhanseno'neill.com, at LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. It's all the same, Heather Hansen O'Neill. And be on the lookout for the launch of the new book very, very soon. And anyone who wants to reach out to me, I'm an open book. You can ask me any questions. You can connect with me anywhere. It's totally fine. I embrace that fully.
Heather Hansen O'Neill, thank you so much for dancing into my life today and sharing a bit of your story and your fire. And I look forward to us staying connected now. It's such a beautiful thing when technology does work this way.
I'm grateful for you, Cheryl. Thank you so much for all you're doing. And I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
I'd also like to thank the following news outlets for the use of their clips in so aptly painting the picture of the fear that we're facing during this pandemic: BBC, PBS, Now This, UNESCO, and Some Good News. I especially want to thank Joel and Luke Smallbone, otherwise known as the Group for King and Country, for allowing me to use an excerpt of their song Together, which could not be a more hopeful and inspiring song for such a time as this. Finally, I'll leave you with the following from Proverbs 23:18. Surely there is a future, and your hope will not be cut off. If you like this episode of the podcast or any other episodes of 19 Stories, would you be so kind to leave me a nice word or two? You can do so on the podcast page of my website, soundsatchelstudios.com. I'll include your recorded review in a player that is featured there. I appreciate your time in doing so. Thank you again for joining me today. I look forward to sharing more stories on the next episode of 19 Stories from Fear to Hope. Until then, stay healthy and hopeful.
Together we are dangerous. Together with our differences. Together we are bolder, braver, stronger.